All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning to officially welcome back Kelly Kroskoff as President of Basketball Business Operations for the Indiana.
No one saw this coming. The woman running the entire organization, the president of the Indiana Fever, finally said the quiet part out loud. Her words didn't just turn heads. They ignited the entire basketball community. For the very first time, the true reality of the franchise came to light. The politics, the intense pressure, the locker room chemistry, and the clash between creating a winning team versus building a commercial brand. Once you uncover the real story, it completely changes how you view Caitlin Clark's situation in Indiana. Let's look back at how this all started. Long before Caitlin Clark ever put on a Hoosier jersey, Indiana was one of the most overlooked teams in professional basketball. We are talking about a franchise that won just 6 games in 2021, 5 in 2022, and 13 in 2023. For nearly a decade, they were treated like a total joke. They had no fan base, no media buzz, and zero spotlight. No television cameras showed up, and the stadium seats stayed empty. The WNBA was moving forward, but the Fever were completely left behind. That was their reality. A once proud franchise had dwindled into a complete afterthought. But no matter how hard they might have tried, no one in the front office could have predicted what was coming next. Everything shifted dramatically the moment the number 1 overall pick of the 2024 WNBA draft stepped into the building. Caitlin Clark did far more than just bring excitement to town. She revolutionized the entire league. Every single arena she played in sold out completely. Television ratings broke records, jerseys flew off the shelves, and a media storm erupted unlike anything women's basketball had ever seen before. Honestly, unlike anything sports had seen in years. Right in the middle of this massive explosion, management faced a critical decision. Would they ride this incredible wave, or would they try to steer it in a totally different direction? That is exactly where the narrative gets fascinating. Because just when the Fever desperately needed a leader who truly understood what they had, a rare once-in-a-generation athlete who was single-handedly redefining the limits of women's sports, the front office made a decision that caught many people off guard. They named Kelly Kroskoff as their new president of basketball and business operations. On paper, the move made perfect sense. Kroskoff possessed deep history with the Fever, having built the roster that captured the franchise's 2012 championship. The organization introduced her with a great deal of excitement and high expectations. However, looking back, certain statements from her very first press conference raised red flags that most people chose to ignore at the time. Words that would return months later to disrupt the entire organization. The warning signs were right there in front of us, but no one truly noticed them until the damage was already done. This is the exact moment where everything began to unravel. It is July 2025, and the Fever are facing a major setback with Caitlin Clark sidelined by an injury. Clark has managed to play in only 11 games so far this season due to a persistent groin issue that has troubled her for weeks. The fans are growing frustrated. The team is fighting hard to secure a spot in the playoffs, and the pressure is intensifying daily. Right in the middle of this chaos, fans online uncover a hidden detail from Kroskoff's October 2024 speech that almost everyone had overlooked when it originally happened. The footage from her introductory press conference suddenly resurfaces on social media. 5 in that archived clip, Kroskoff looks directly into the cameras and states that this project is about the Indiana Fever as a whole. She explains that while Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark are their foundational stars, and they plan to keep building around them, her ultimate goal is to transform the franchise into an enduring brand like Apple, making them a true national leader. Comparing the team to Apple was all it took to spark a firestorm. Within a matter of hours, the video spread everywhere online, and a massive wave of fan backlash followed. The reason was simple. The fan base didn't hear a grand corporate vision in those words. They heard a clear warning sign. The front office had never experienced a reaction quite like this before. The fans weren't just angry, they were highly organized, vocal, and impossible for management to ignore. The comparison to Apple struck a sensitive nerve because of how Apple actually operated in the real world. A single visionary, Steve Jobs, established the entire identity of that company, and the moment he stepped away, the corporate empire nearly fell apart. So, when the Fever's president utilized that specific comparison, Clark's loyal supporters saw it as a revealing mistake. It signaled to them that the front office already viewed Clark as just a single replaceable part rather than the focal point of the franchise. On social media, one fan pointed out that iconic brands are defined by the people who embody their values, noting that Apple became a global powerhouse precisely because of Steve Jobs' unique star power and vision. Another fan pulled no punches with their commentary, predicting that the Fever will eventually have to confess they ruined the greatest opportunity in the history of women's sports once Clark finally decides she has had enough of management's internal chaos. Across every message board, comment section, and online reply, the underlying sentiment remained exactly the same. You do not minimize the most impactful player this franchise has ever seen, and you need to keep the focus squarely on her. This widespread criticism wasn't just empty online noise. It was a serious public relations crisis. It forced someone inside the organization to realize just how incredibly intense the situation was becoming. Just hours after the controversial video started trending heavily, Kroskoff's entire social media account completely vanished. It was totally wiped out. Where a very active online presence had existed just days before, there was now only total silence, without a single parting message or official explanation left behind for the public. This is where the internal dynamics become significantly more complicated. One of Clark's closest friends on the team, Lexi Hull, sat down for an in-depth feature with Glamour magazine and spoke with absolute honesty. Hull addressed topics that almost no one wearing a Fever jersey had been willing to speak about publicly before, even though everyone across the league was already well aware of it. She noted that because of the massive media spotlight and the incredibly dedicated fans who have supported the team ever since Caitlin arrived, there is a clear sense of resentment directed at the Fever from the outside. She emphasized that this is felt deeply by the players on the court, the ones who actually suit up right next to Caitlin Clark every single night. She took her comments a step further, revealing that opposing teams throughout the WNBA have openly discussed this in their own locker rooms, making statements like they absolutely cannot let the Fever win. Hull's candid words brought to light a very uncomfortable truth that had been quietly building up over the past 2 seasons. The Fever are no longer just playing standard basketball games. Because of the specific players on their roster, rival teams have placed a massive target on their backs every time they step out onto the floor. This intense rivalry isn't because of the organization itself, but rather because of one extraordinary individual. 12 Sophie Cunningham pushed the conversation even further. As a player who made it clear early on that anyone taking cheap shots at her teammate would face immediate consequences, she established herself as Clark's primary protector on the floor. She had already stepped forward to validate exactly what observers across the league had been whispering about for months. Cunningham admitted that she heard these discussions well before she ever arrived in Indiana. Back when she was still playing in Phoenix, she noted, there were very explicit, targeted conversations regarding Clark taking place inside the locker room. It was clear that rival players weren't just trying to win a standard basketball game. They were actively trying to send a physical message. Throughout the entire season, the dominant story surrounding Clark has been the physical toll she endured, framed as an endless series of rough, welcome to the professional league moments. The highly physical style of play directed at Clark was so incredibly intense that it genuinely shocked even neutral basketball commentators. By the time her season was cut short after only 13 games due to her severe groin injury, many people were openly questioning whether the league referees had done enough to protect her safety. For a growing number of analysts who watched the games closely, the definitive answer was no. However, that public drama was only the beginning of the story. While all of this played out in front of the cameras, the internal reality of what it is actually like to work alongside Caitlin Clark as a teammate was finally starting to emerge. Surprisingly, it looked nothing like what her critics had continuously predicted. The primary narrative pushed by Caitlin Clark's loudest detractors was quite simple. They claimed she created division inside the locker room and that her teammates disliked her. They argued that no basketball team could survive the internal fractures caused by that level of overwhelming fame and constant media scrutiny. In fact, Hall of Famer Cheryl Swoops stated on a podcast back in September 2024 that key players on the Fever roster were quietly showing their frustration and wanted out because they simply could no longer handle the drama surrounding Clark's arrival. That rumor spread like wildfire. It was repeated constantly across sports media, turning into a persistent background noise that followed the Fever directly into their second season together as a group. That is, until Clark addressed the noise directly alongside sports icons Rebecca Lobo and Diana Taurasi during a guest appearance on a March Madness broadcast. She confronted the rumors head-on, showing no anger or defensiveness whatsoever. Instead, she remained remarkably relaxed about the entire situation. She explained that you simply get accustomed to outsiders believing they know exactly what goes on behind closed doors, when the reality is they have absolutely no idea. The actual teammates who shared that locker room with her backed her up completely through their actions. After she successfully returned from her injury layoff, Clark's teammates rushed the floor to celebrate with her during the 2025 postseason. Following a key victory, they playfully interrupted her live television interview. They constantly showed up to support her in genuine, unscripted moments. When the Fever captured the Commissioner's Cup, the locker room erupted into a completely authentic celebration. Watching the players laugh and express pure joy for one another, it was clear this bond was a genuine connection, not a staged performance for the cameras. This is the crucial element that mainstream sports media has completely failed to understand. The real story in Indiana was never about whether Caitlin Clark's teammates liked her personally. The actual issue was whether the front office executives overseeing the franchise were truly prepared to surround her with the right talent and dedicate their full organizational focus to building around her. The reality on the floor tells a completely different story, as Aaliyah Boston formed an incredibly tight, seamless connection with Clark on the court. Lexi Hull remained fiercely loyal, while Sophie Cunningham and other incoming players were publicly praising Clark long before they ever shared a single minute on the hardwood together. Michaela Timpson, the talented rookie who successfully earned a spot on the final roster, demonstrated a deep, authentic respect for Clark that simply cannot be faked. Following the expansion draft, Clark left affectionate messages on Instagram for two departing teammates, writing words like, "Cub, I love you" to Christy Wallace and calling Chloe Bibby her Aussie for life. The bond between these players was entirely real. These were genuine, lasting friendships. However, great chemistry alone isn't enough to secure professional championships, and that exact realization was the core tension defining the entire franchise. Hidden within the full text of Kelly Kroskoff's October 2024 press conference, not just the brief soundbite about Apple, was an important perspective that many people missed in their eagerness to criticize her. Kroskoff spoke in detail about a long-term strategy, explaining that building a lasting brand takes time, that sometimes it takes an entire generation to reach elite status, and noting that Caitlin Clark was just a 10-year-old child back when Indiana won its only WNBA championship in 2012. Perhaps management believed they had been building toward a future goal all along, planting seeds for a young child who would someday find inspiration in what the Fever accomplished back then. Whether you view that philosophy as a brilliant long-term vision or complete corporate delusion depends entirely on how you interpret the front office's true motivations. Yet, one fact remains completely undeniable. The massive crowds of fans who began packing Fever games in 2024 didn't buy tickets because of a corporate brand strategy. They showed up to the arena because of a single player. They routinely drove for hours from all over the country just to see her play. The financial impact they made was something the WNBA had never experienced in its entire history, drawing attendance numbers that league executives had never even dreamed possible. Furthermore, when Clark's injury sidelining became a measurable, documented reality that kept her off the court, ticket sales immediately plummeted, and television viewership dropped significantly. The undeniable truth of what Clark truly meant to the financial health of that franchise became impossible to ignore. Despite this, the organization's highest executives kept emphasizing the team, the institution, and the brand in their official messaging, almost as if the individual person drawing all that unprecedented attention was somehow separate from the franchise itself. During that initial press conference, Kroskoff made another comment that deserves a closer look. She noted that if you are an intelligent basketball player who watches how Caitlin Clark passes and commands the floor, you would naturally want to come play right alongside her. That statement turned out to be far more accurate than even she likely realized at the time, as the Fever's sudden recruiting power quietly became one of the most fascinating storylines in the entire WNBA. Established players were suddenly willing to accept financial pay cuts just to secure a roster spot in Indiana. For veteran free agents, the unique opportunity to share the court with Clark became the ultimate deciding factor in their career moves. The massive impact of Clark's star power extended far beyond just packed arenas. Because of the incredible basketball environment she was creating, elite players actively wanted to be part of something much larger than a standard WNBA regular season. Through this momentum, the Fever transformed into one of the absolute most desirable destinations in the entire league. This didn't happen because of a clever corporate marketing plan. It happened because of a transcendent basketball player who elevated the play of everyone around her and filled arenas everywhere she went. As we look ahead to 2026 and whatever future moves the Fever decide to make next, the roster is already seeing major shifts. The franchise lost two key contributors to the WNBA expansion draft, with Chloe Bibby heading to Portland and Christy Wallace joining Toronto. Clark herself had to navigate a season that was widely expected to be her dominant breakout second year, but instead turned into an injury nightmare that restricted her to just 13 appearances on the court during the regular season. Even with those limitations, she still managed to average 16.5 points, 8.5 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, earning her a well-deserved spot in the All-Star game. She remained the absolute focal point of league conversation, even while dressed in street clothes and cheering from the sidelines. Beneath all the immediate drama, Kroskoff highlighted the Fever's brand-new $78 million training complex as the true foundation for the franchise's next generation. Although this state-of-the-art facility isn't scheduled to open its doors until 2027, the venue is designed to serve as the exact kind of elite home base that will attract top-tier talent for decades to come. All the necessary pieces are currently on the board. The ultimate question now is whether the executives making the big decisions above the court truly understand the value of what they possess, and whether they will take decisive action before this golden opportunity slips away for good. Underneath every public debate regarding the Fever's corporate offices, every media narrative about Clark's teammates, and every dramatic comment about locker room tension, lies a much larger reality that is actually incredibly straightforward. This organization went from a team winning just 5 games a year to becoming the most watched franchise in the entire history of women's basketball in the span of a single season. This isn't a typical, slow rebuilding project. It is a full-scale sports revolution. What's more, revolutions are never created by corporate branding committees sitting around a boardroom table. They are driven by once-in-a-generation artists who make the entire sport more exciting, more competitive, and more joyful for everyone sharing the floor with them. Fans immediately recognized the underlying threat in the Fever president's stated goal of building a corporate brand modeled after Apple, which is precisely why it triggered such an intense outcry. It is the exact same corporate mistake that ruined past sports franchises that tried to market a logo instead of celebrating their superstar. The players inside that locker room understand this truth better than anyone else possibly could. They live it every single day and have seen its impact firsthand. As demonstrated by every supportive interaction on the sidelines and every public statement, what they consistently emphasize in their interviews about playing alongside Caitlin Clark is that this isn't just a standard roster situation. This is a rare, historic opportunity that a franchise only gets once. The Fever's leadership would be wise to ensure that the people running the organization align themselves with that exact same belief. One fact is absolutely certain: the competitive window is open right now. The real debate isn't about whether this incredible opportunity exists, but whether management possesses the courage to step up and truly amaze the world. The woman sitting at the very top of the entire organization, the president of the Indiana Fever, finally spoke the unspoken truth out loud. Her controversial statements did far more than just cause surprise. They set the basketball world completely on fire. For the first time, the veil was lifted on the internal politics, the immense pressure, the team chemistry, and the ongoing struggle to balance a championship roster with a corporate brand. Once you understand the entire story, it completely reshapes your perspective on Caitlin Clark's journey in Indiana. Let's re-examine the very beginning of this narrative. Before Caitlin Clark ever put on a Hoosier uniform, Indiana was easily one of the most forgotten teams in professional sports. The record books show a dismal 6 wins in 2021, 5 victories in 2022, and just 13 wins in 2023. For nearly 10 long years, the team was considered a total joke. They had no loyal fans, no media presence, and absolutely no spotlight. No television cameras bothered to show up, and the stadium seats remained completely empty. The rest of the WNBA was growing rapidly, while the Fever were left entirely behind. That was their bleak reality, as an afterthought took the place of a once-proud franchise. Yet, no matter how hard they might have tried, no one in that front office could have ever engineered what happened next. Everything changed completely the moment the number 1 overall pick of the 2024 WNBA draft walked through the doors. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring energy to the city, She completely transformed the entire landscape of the league. To make sure you don't miss any updates on this evolving story, please share your thoughts in the comments below, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications. Just click the video on your screen, and we will see you in the next episode.